I did restart my computer because it was acting goofy earlier.
Okay. Welcome to our latest co-hosted podcast. I'm Chuck Marple, your host, here with Karen E., co-host. How are you doing today, Karen?
I'm doing well. It's turning into fall already, and I love fall weather and leaves falling, and I even enjoy snow.
I miss snow for about 2 weeks of the year, and after that, I would have had my fill. We've got sunny days and cool mornings, although the warmer mornings will be coming back. We're going back into the 90s next week, which doesn't thrill me, but that's okay. Stay in shorts for a while instead of the change over from jeans to shorts. In today's podcast, we'll be looking at some of the current topics and issues that are making the news. The death and memorializing of the Queen Elizabeth seems to be getting the most of the headlines lately. Have you been following it, Karen?
Yes, a little bit, not 100%, but what is interesting is like there's all these different parts of it. It's the idea of having somebody. She's the only person in modern times that's been ruling for so long. 7 decades is a really long time, and not
Mm-hmm.
only that, it's you know I grew up in the time, like I remember when Charles and Diana got married, and so Charles has always sort of been in my consciousness most of my life, and knowing that he's going to be, or he is now, the king, and he has a very different point of view than she did as far as royals, talking about there's 100 staffers that he may get rid of. He may do a lot to shrink the working royal family. And why? Is it, just he thinks it doesn't need to be so big, or because this is like we're watching a winding down of the United Kingdom's monarchy?
It could be. It could be. Talking about your longevity, we were born before she became queen. After she'd been married, about the same time she got married for us, and but we've lived our entire lives with Queen Elizabeth and Queen. We saw her as a young woman. Certainly, I mean, for our first memory of her in the mid 1950s, till aged as she has become and did until last week. It amazes me that there has been at times so much criticism of the monarchy, and yet they estimate as many as 1 million people will walk by that casket. They had tens of thousands of people that did it in Scotland. They were waiting out in the rain and everything else, and thousands upon thousands of people were waiting to watch her hearse. That was a beautiful day of doing the hearse, a beautiful way, I should say. Having it lit up from inside with a crown on it, so people could actually feel they were part of it rather than just watching a hearse go by. It didn't have the same impact on it. But it amazes me, and it's a complex situation, the monarchy, anyway. You have people of color in places like Africa and India have mixed feelings about all of this. They understand this was the queen. Queen. She had been there for a long time. She was a caring person. People loved her and everything else. But she was also, when she became queen, she was also the queen of an empire. During her time in office, many, many countries became independent. Some of them joined the crown as a commonwealth. Some of them did not. Several are looking to leave the commonwealth today. So it amazes me that there's such feelings for her when there's such antipathy in other areas.
I think that it just comes down to where you fall on it. I worked with a lot of British people when I was deployed, and it was interesting to talk to them. Like some of them were, big followers of the royals. Some of them didn't really care, and some of them couldn't stand them. And I think it's very similar to how we are over here with celebrities. Some people get all the magazines and follow all the tabloids, and some people are like, oh, they're kind of there. I like a few, and others hate the whole thing. And I think that some of some of it, I think too, is like I think it depends on what color you are. A white
Mm-hmm.
person growing up in the United Kingdom is taught to look at these other white people as, this is the queen, this is the prince, this is, whatever, and you just accept it. They haven't kept you down. They haven't taken anything away from you or not let you have more rights. And I think if you're from one of those countries where your ancestors have been treated poorly and not been able to be independent, for maybe the countries weren't ready yet, I don't know, but I can see why there would be resentment against her. And I think in this country in particular, as we start working towards racial equality and equity, we can see, you know, in the historical context that there are things that weren't right. And she did right wrongs and she did do a lot more, but I do think that as unfortunate as it is, you pay for the sins of your fathers. And I think that that is something that's happening right now. You know,
Well,
she was part of this system that did hurt people and did have a lot of colonization. And you know, I think that I think it's normal that people would be upset by that.
yeah, I think it's interesting you brought up about she's paying for the sins of her family. Is that the Bible talks about sins unto the fourth family, fourth level of your family. So it's like when they went through their deportation to Babylon, the Lord kept them in Babylon for 4 generations. So you see that, and it was under her great grandmother. I think it's her grandmother. Could be her great grandmother, probably her great grandmother. Excuse me, Victoria. Um, that was the height of the British Empire, where they said the sun never set on the British Empire, and then didn't for about 50 more years. But it's interesting if you think we came this close to being part of this empire. Had there been a different person who was prime minister, and I'll get to that point because you made a good point there a second ago. Say if Pitt would have been it, somebody who was more sympathetic to the idea of a little bit more authority to the colonists instead of having to have total control from England, instead of Lord North, we might still have achieved a peaceful independence as Canada did and possibly be part of the Commonwealth and have a parliamentary procedure that's much different. But like you mentioned, you talked about the Queen and you talked about the other things. Uh, the Queen, we sent the Declaration of Independence and focused on King George III. But the truth of the matter is, the problem wasn't the king as much as it was the prime minister and his government that was going after. So it's a complicated thing. Would our life have been easier under Parliament, under the part of the English system? We don't know. That brings us to a whole different thing about democracy, which isn't going to be too much of a topic today.
But think about this, like you undo anything, you undo our independence, you don't have Alexander Hamilton changing the financial
Mm-hmm.
system. You don't have a lot of things that came about because of independence. No one would know who George Washington even was. He would just be a
No,
statesman, for England, and it would have been completely different had that never happened.
well, you can say the same things. I was talking to your mother this morning about, the what ifs. What if, in fact, Robert Kennedy had not been assassinated and been elected president? We would not have had Nixon. We would not have had Watergate and everything goes on there. We would have been out of Vietnam a lot sooner than we were. What if the person who won the popular vote in the year in 2000, Al Gore, had become president? We wouldn't have had George Bush. We wouldn't have had Roberts being the Chief Justice. And what if the popular vote would have won in 2016? But you can't live with the what ifs. We have to deal with the
No.
realities of it.
Sometimes it's interesting to think of as like a piece of historical fiction to write. Like,
Oh, it
take
is.
away all of this, and what does this look like?
Talk about what ifs. We came awful close to a major economic disruption in this country. We came within 24 hours of having a strike of the railroad workers, 30,000 plus people walking off the job and basically ending freight moving throughout the country. Also cutting off 3/4 of Amtrak's routes because they had to go over freight lines. Scary time.
So I only have like been following this kind of on the periphery. Like, what were the workers' complaints?
They were putting on saying that they were basically on 24-hour call 7 days a week, and they were penalized because they have like a point system for attendance or whatever, and they had a little say in those and when they were called in. And what they would do is if they had to take go to a doctor's appointment or they had a sick relative or something and they couldn't come in for that, they would lose points, and it was hurting them. So they wanted to have a real policy, a fair policy put in there. And I guess from what I've read this morning, that was what pushed Biden, pushed the companies to do that, to make that a more reasonable policy. So they were able to come to a conclusion. One of the interesting things, people were talking about 10 years ago, the death of unions in this country. We finally got a president who realized the importance of unions. I mean, if you look at what unions have given to us, they gave us 40-hour work week. They gave us vacation. They gave us medical. They gave us retirements. All those things came about not because of employers being so generous, but rather unions. Now, can unions go too far? Sure. The auto workers used to jump out for nothing and have wildcat strikes. My father hated a man named Stanley at General Electric nearby where we live because he had wildcat strikes. If he somebody had a toenail that was broken because of something that happened, he would call wildcat strike. And eventually, they moved a good portion of General Electric to states that didn't have the Oklahoma thing.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
you
they
look
didn't
at
have that
I
wildcat.
don't I don't know a lot of the details, but you hear about Teamsters and how out of control they got and are. It's it's bad, but like sometimes I read articles about, the early 1900s and times before we had unions, and a lot of it feels similar to now. Like people,
Yeah,
workers being taken advantage of.
yeah, and the big thing, in fact, people don't realize compulsory education. One of the reasons we have compulsory education and why they brought it up to basically eighth grade was because we had children working in factories under extremely unsafe conditions. Because back in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, they had open blades spinning, they had crushing things coming as machinery was made, and people didn't have all the safety things on there. So you saw many disabled children and children dying, children falling into vats of boiling stuff and everything. It was a terrible experience, and things have changed, thankfully, for all that. We're in a very, very complicated world now where robots are replacing people as fast as going to other countries. So you just don't know what's going on. But at least that strike was settled and we didn't have another major blow to our economy, which it would have been. It would have been a
Yeah,
huge blow.
yeah,
Okay, now on to a little bit about politics. Over the past couple of days, 30 more DOJ subpoenas have gone out. People who are very close to the Trump campaign and the Trump White House have gotten that. Uh, who was it? Just got their phone taken. Oh, my pillow guy just had his
yeah.
phone taken away and find out what was going on with that. A good portion of it relates to this false elector program where they had these people. They showed that woman leading who was a false elector, leading other false electors into the same place that actually they had a machine damaged and tampered with.
It it feels like it's getting tighter around Trump. It feels like there's a lot that's happening and sort of cascading down around him. And I saw that Mark Meadows complied with the DOJ into their January 6th stuff. He provided text messages and he's given a lot of information, and that's probably not somebody that Trump wants to be complying.
No, because he was there while all the bad stuff was going on. I mean,
Yeah.
the closest we got from the select committee to understand how much he was involved with was from that staffer there from the deputy. Um,
Cassidy
so
Hutchison.
Cassie Hudson there. That was fantastic testimony.
And then the lawyers
Also,
too, they've been complying, like Cipollone.
yeah, they have to, and then we got to get those other lawyers. We got to get Giuliani and Eastman and those people out there.
Clark.
Clark. Clark is in trouble. They've taken his stuff too. One of the interesting things that's going along with the in less than 2 months, we're going to have this midterm, as they call it, election. Interestingly enough, in many states, to win your primary, you had to support the election denial. You had to say that, in fact, Biden did not win. And the truth of the matter we know is, yeah, he did win. There was no two ways about it. And it was the freest and most fair election we've ever had, and the most provable election, because 97% of it had paper ballots. They go back every time they went to try to say there wasn't. Give me proof. Give me evidence. No one's ever appeared up. But these MAGA winners in places like New Hampshire, places like Pennsylvania, places like you're in Ohio right now, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and places, we have these people who have run on that election now because they felt they had to get the votes, because they had defeated mainline Republicans, and now they have to run a general election. What's that going to mean?
I think that they're going to have a really tough time. Like, I think about this is like a little bit of an aside, but I'll bring it back to what you just asked. Lindsey
Okay.
Graham and his recent
Oh,
proposal about abortion ban after 15 weeks, and there's a lot of analysis as to why he would do that. And some people think that maybe he's showing that, look, we're not going to ban it completely federally. This is our plan. So it gives some of these people something to go off of in the midterms. But what it's more likely to do is to completely turn off people to these Republicans, especially the crazy ones. And those undecided people will either vote for a write-in candidate or third party candidate or Democrat. And I don't think that the Republicans are going to do well, even in some mostly red swing type states.
no, they've really tied themselves. One of the interesting things, or the irony of Lindsey Graham saying that, is one of the key things that Alito and the conservatives did on the court, said, we'll leave it back up to the states. And now he's talking about
Exactly.
bringing it into the federal realm again, just the
And
opposite of what they said.
they're dumb in that they put this on their social media. Last night I found on June 24th, Lindsey Graham said, "We've corrected a constitutional issue and had basically a reset on this issue, and now the states can determine where they fall on it." And I'm like, but look, social media indicates that you cannot walk anything back that you already said. And so he's getting skewered over this,
Yeah, well, they
as he
are
should.
all that. The ex-president can they can put video right in front of him and say, "No, I didn't say that. That was faked." It's crazy how we go it. And we're going to be, I believe they're talking about September 28th, the January 6th Select Committee hearing is going to begin again. If their drama is half as good, they are great. They've been great Hollywood to watch. It's been fun. But
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what else new they have in there, and they've had plenty of times.
Yeah, and
Now,
they've had a lot of new people willing to open up because they've seen where the chips are starting to fall and they don't want to be on the wrong side of that.
now, listeners, I take pride in one really big thing with my wonderful daughter here. Starting at a very young age, she started going to football games with me, and she became an expert, particularly after Donovan McNabb went up to the Eagles. She suddenly became much more knowledgeable about the NFL and the players and the teams than I have. She'd be on deployments, and people would wonder about something. They say, "Oh, go ask Karen," because she was considered the expert. So today, in our concluding section, we're going to talk about the NFL after week one. How many did you see any of the games, Karen? Many of the games?
I did not watch any games. I followed the Eagles a little bit live online, but I didn't actually watch anything this time
Well,
around.
let's
So,
bring up. She is busy, particularly on Saturdays. She is coaching soccer. She's coaching two of our grandchildren. Uh, one who is going to be 10 and one who's going to be 12 in the next few months. And the younger team has been doing very, very well. They have a wonderful, cute name. Do you want to tell us the name?
They are the chocolate ninja monkeys.
Yeah, and it's interesting. But I wanted to bring up that because we're so proud because the things that the comments she's been getting back from parents and the way she's done it and everything with those teams has been quite impressive. You're doing a great job. We're very proud of you.
Thank you.
I watched a lot of football, not all too many games, but on a rarity, we stayed up for a whole Thursday night football to watch the Buffalo Bills take on the Rams. It was an amazing game because when you have the Super Bowl championship team, you tend to have expectations put upon you. They didn't look at. Of course, one of the big reasons was Von Miller, who had been a Ram on that super defense team, went over to Buffalo Bills and he made the team pay. He was on their backs all the time. And that was a very good game to see. And since my favorite quarterback changed teams, I've kind of taken Buffalo under my wings as being my favorite team now. My favorite player was Russell Wilson. And is Russell Wilson still, but I mean, I think Josh Allen is starting to move up on Russell. So it was very, very interesting games. Now we get into, as we were going to, one of the more complicated men playing there, and I hate this term, the GOAT. The GOAT to me has always been the person who's done screwed up. But then you get now, it's the greatest of all time. Okay, I'll grant it. One thing I'll say about Tom Brady, particularly when he was up with Bill Belichick, is he could take very, very low skilled, low experienced people and make them into acceptable, if not good, or not even semi-great players, receivers generally. And he was very impressive to be able to do that under almost all the circumstances. And he did move and won a Super Bowl. And then he decided, okay, it's time to retire. So he said, okay, I'll do it. And he was retired for just a matter of weeks. It wasn't very long. Then he decided he's going to come back. The middle of training camp, takes 11 days off during personal business. Well, guess what, listeners? If you haven't found out what that personal business is likely, he and his very rich model wife, Giselle, are now living separate lives. Why do you think is that?
Um, well, like Tom Brady is by football standards elderly. He is, I think, 45, 44. I mean,
45.
you don't see people playing that long. He's not a quarterback that takes a lot of hits. I take issue with you saying that he turns average or less than average receivers and running backs great. No, he's got an incredible offensive line that gives him all the time in the world to lay out the perfect ball for somebody that can maybe get it. And that's what it is. Bill Belichick always kept an incredible offensive line for him. That's all anybody needs to be able to get a good pass off if they're not a scrambler like McNabb or Vic was. But he has this crazy longevity. Like, he and I are similarly aged. And I think about even being in the Air Force at this point in time sounds it's way too much. Not that I couldn't do it, but I just don't want to anymore. I don't want to put myself through that. And you think about the season is 16 weeks regular. Is it 17 weeks now, regular season?
Something like that,
Anyway,
yeah.
even if it's 10 weeks regular season, our soccer season is 8 and I'm already kind of done and we're only halfway through, but it's a lot of weeks and you have a bye week, so there's like 17, 18 weeks of games. And if you make playoffs, as Tom Brady often has, that's additional weeks. And then there's Pro Bowl if you want to play in that. If you're not if you're not doing the Super Bowl, like there's so much to it. And you have training camp. And this is to be at the level he's at, this is a year-long thing. And he might have been home for 4 months tops before he's back in the gym full time. maybe not even near home. I quite frankly think she got tired of raising his kids by herself, as much as a rich person's raising kids. But I think that she feels that he put football first, and she's maybe not going to be that trophy wife that he wanted. He was with, never married, but with another model actress before her, Bridget Moynihan, and they had a son. And I'm wondering how much time he really got with that son, and maybe Giselle got more time with his son than he did. I think that she, in a way, she sort of reminds me of Melania Trump. Like, she's just never seemed to be all that interested in what he had going on. And I think she was upset that he went back. However, he may have gone back because she was like, I just don't really actually like you anymore. And so that's what made him go back.
Okay, let's go back a second to what you were saying. See what I mean about how knowledgeable she is about football? So, yeah, I tend to agree with you that I think that she just got sick of playing second fiddle to a ball. I mean, and he goes out there, he does take hits, and I agree with you. And I think that one of the biggest changes in football over the last 20, 25 years is the size, the strength, and the speed of offensive and defensive linemen. Those linemen, those guys are 300 plus pounds in some cases. And those guys can run speeds that wide receivers used to be able to run.
But I
The
mean,
wide receivers run track speeds.
Just look back like 15 years ago. Dwight Freeney was called lightweight as a defensive end at 265 pounds. That's lightweight. But for an offensive defensive line, he's small.
Here's another one that we saw in that made quite a career for himself in several places. And he's from Syracuse. Another Syracuse player that's done a lot is Chandler Jones out there. He's one of the top defensive ends out there now too. He's like in the top 10 or 15 players in the country. So, football is a very interesting thing. We use Sunday Ticket to watch it because I like to watch so many out of market games. Having been stuck with Atlanta for a while, there's a frustrating one too. Fourth quarter, you have like almost a 3 touchdown lead, and you blow it. You blow it again.
That
I
never
can't believe it.
gets
Like the
old.
Super Bowl. That was
Never gets old.
horrible. That was horrible. So what do? You just go onward to do it. But it's a crazy time. But we watch that. That's not going to be on DirecTV anymore. After this year, the contract runs out, and nobody expects to do it. So we're going to go to streaming probably for everything after this. Well, just the first part of the streaming is going to be whatever streaming service has Sunday Ticket, so I can see all those games. And hopefully it
That'll
won't be
be
ridiculously
interesting.
expensive. It will be.
Anything, and I would tell you, anything with live TV, you're going to pay at least, probably with the football, it'll be at least $60 to $70 for just that service.
Yeah, it probably will be worth it. And the
Because I think
other ones that
Hulu Live, I think last time I looked was $47.99, and it's probably going up to $49.99 or more with
yeah,
Hulu's
but
recent increases.
when you get DirecTV, it's even more for a lot of television that we never watch.
Which is
So
why
I
I
mean,
cut the cord, because $270 was my last DirecTV bill, and I was done.
yeah,
That was too much, and that was with Sunday Ticket.
yeah. That's one. Sunday Ticket isn't that big, but because we dropped all the premium channels because the movies weren't all that great. So we covered a lot of interesting things here. Is there any final comments you want to make?
No, it's been nice to talk about a bunch of different things.
It
Just
is, and
cover
just as
recent.
we're talking about something that is, we're thinking about having a podcast in the near future with some guests, and something that's near and dear to my heart for years, and that is what is going on in the classroom today. And I hope to have a retired friend of mine and a former student and somebody else, maybe 4 or 5 people on this. And Karen has agreed to be the host and the moderator on it. So that may be a few weeks in the coming. It's going to take a while to get everybody online. And hopefully they'll all be willing. So I'll be looking forward to that. Thank you for listening. God bless you. God bless this great country. God bless all of our servicemen and protect them where they are. Goodbye.